in times like these. I won't be made useless. I won't be idle with despair. I'll gather myself around my faith, for light does the darkness most fear. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours. They are my own, but they're not yours. They are my own, and I am never broken. Stole your golden shoes, but it didn't steal your laughter. And heartache came to visit me, but I knew it wasn't ever after. We'll fight, not out of spite, for someone must stand up for what's right. 'Cause where there's a man who has no voice, there I shall go on singing. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours. They are my own, but they're not yours. They are my own, and I am never broken. Down on my knees, and I will pray. I will get down on my knees, and I will pray. I will get down on my knees, and I will pray. But they're not yours, they are my own. But they're not yours, they are my own, and I am never broken. We are never broken.
Thank you for coming tonight to our community gathering on the bullying prevention legislation. My name is Melanie Ross, and I'll be your hostess tonight. I am a resident of Forest Lake. I'm a mother of 3 children. I'm a member of Faith Lutheran Church, and I am a member of the Minnesota Safe Schools for All Coalition. Tonight we're going to be learning about the Safe and Supportive Minnesota Schools Act, which is the comprehensive bullying prevention bill. No child should have to go through the pain of bullying. In my heart, I cannot accept the old idea that bullying is something that just happens to some kids. As a mom, as a teacher, as a friend, and as a Christian, I cannot accept this. Thankfully, as bullying is talked about more, people are wanting to see changes happen and are believing this less. This new bullying prevention bill is a big step forward in changing this old belief about bullying. I would like to introduce to you Faith Lutheran Church's pastor, Pastor Paul Brown. Pastor Brown has been a pastor for 13 years at Faith, and during his years of service, Pastor Brown has touched the lives of many, sharing the message of God's love to all. And thank you, Pastor Paul, for showing your kindness to our family and welcoming us when we first started here at Faith, and for your support tonight. Pastor Paul.
Thank you, Melanie. I too would like to welcome you to this community gathering for bullying prevention legislation, and thank you for special thanks for the keynote speaker, Senator Scott Dibble, for your presence here this evening, and for the many participants who helped make this gathering possible, especially Melanie Ross and her son Jake. Melanie has asked that I give an opening prayer for our gathering. What I'm about to share with you, for the most part, is a special prayer that I found written by Anita Hunt, who is from the United Kingdom, who is actually a writer of children's books and a head of an organization called Scattering the Stones Ministry. And the conclusion of the prayer, the last petition this evening, comes from me specifically for this gathering. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we come before you to raise up those who are being bullied, for those who are being hurt with cruel words, who are being tormented and suffering from physical abuse. For all who are suffering right now, we ask for your protection to surround them. For those who are being bullied at home, school, work, online, or within their community, please encircle them with your arms of love. Where there is such pain hidden away in darkness, we look to your everlasting light. Where lies are spoken, we look to your wonderful truth. For where words of harm have done great damage, please replace them with honeycomb words of kindness. Where bodies show scars and bruises of pain, we ask for your balm of healing to cover them. For where they feel that they have no worth, please encourage their hearts and come to know how special they are in your sight. Please open their eyes, Lord, to see your unending gifts of grace and mercy. May they feel you carry them where they are heavy laden under the weight of their burdens and anxiety. Please provide faithful companions to all those who are lost and alone. Please strengthen all those who are at their weakest point. Where spirits have been crushed by cruelty, we call on your holy name to move within their life in power. Please enable those who are suffering in silence find their voice to share what is happening in their life. May they find someone who will listen, who will take it seriously, and walk with them in their sorrow. We pray that positive changes will be put in place as soon as possible to prevent further bullying and harassment. May your kindness, tender mercies, and righteousness be seen in abundance. Please envelop them with your unfailing love and peace. May they find joy and know safety once again within your refuge. We ask for your healing to be poured out on those who are hurting today. We look to you for help and justice for all those who are being treated unfairly. Please bend down from the heavens and draw them close to you. Where they feel overwhelmed by troubles, please may they see the hope we have in you. Where memories haunt, we ask that they will be replaced with your goodness. May they meet with you at their deepest need and feel lifted in security within the palm of your hands. Thank you, Lord, that as we pray to you, you release us from our fears. We praise you that in our desperation you hear our cries. We hold tenderly the promise that you are close to the brokenhearted. We receive comfort that you will never leave us or forsake us. We thank you for your faithfulness and for hearing our prayer. We thank you for this gathering, for the coalition that represents the concerned parents, students, educators, legislators, and many others whose hearts turn to the downtrodden. Be present in this gathering, and especially present with those who have to endure bullying each day as a way of life. Help us not to confine you, O God, into a small box of how you work in the world, that as you work in and through your church, so also you are big enough and bold enough to work your will in schools, the halls of government, in the marketplace, and the public square. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Paul. I would like to introduce to you next Jake Ross. Jake is an advocate for peace and bullying prevention. Last year, Jake testified at three legislative hearings at the Minnesota State Capitol, telling his personal story of bullying and asking the state legislators for their support of the Safe and Supportive Minnesota Schools Act. In May, Jake was named Upstander of the Week by the Bully Project. In July, Jake received the Coles Cares Regional Scholarship. I'm happy to introduce to you my son, Jake Ross.
Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight to our community gathering. My name is Jake Ross. I'm 11 years old and I am from Forest Lake. I'm here tonight at our community gathering to tell my story of when I was bullied. But first I'd like to say some thank yous. Thank you to my church, Faith Lutheran, and Pastor Paul Brown for hosting this community gathering. Faith Lutheran Church feels like home to me as I feel so welcomed here. The church members are kind and friendly, and I get to feel the love of Jesus as I worship here. Thank you, Pastor Brown, for the support you've given me over the years. You mean a lot to me, and I'm going to miss you when you go to your new church. Thank you for your kindness. And thank you to everyone who is helping to make the Safe and Supportive Minnesota Schools Act a law. These people include Governor Dayton, who commissioned the task force that researched the problem of bullying. Governor Dayton's Task Force on the Prevention of Bullying. This is a group of experts who researched the problem of bullying. Part of this task force's work included traveling around the state of Minnesota, where they met and talked with many students, parents, educators, and community members about the issue of bullying. It is this task force who gave their recommendations for how to improve bullying policies in Minnesota schools. Senator Dibble and Representative Davney, who are the chief authors of the Safe and Supportive Minnesota Schools Act. I've had the pleasure of hearing both of these legislators speak at the state capitol during hearings of this bullying prevention bill. I have had the honor of meeting both Senator Dibble and Representative Davney and can tell you they are very nice. I want to say a special thank you to Senator Dibble, who dedicated his time tonight to be our keynote speaker at this gathering. I met Senator Dibble last year at the Minnesota State Capitol when I was testifying in favor of the Safe and Supportive Minnesota Schools Act. I admire his work to protect kids in Minnesota from bullying. On a personal note, Senator Dibble has been very supportive of me, and he is a huge role model of mine. Because of you, Senator Dibble, I think it would be cool to be a senator. You're awesome. Also, thank you to the Minnesota Safe Schools for All Coalition and Outfront for their advocacy in passing this bill. The Minnesota Safe Schools for All Coalition is a group of education, disability, youth, religious, LGBT, and social service organizations, as well as individuals who support the passage of this comprehensive bullying prevention bill. There are currently 92 coalition members, and I'm one of them. Before I share my story of bullying, I'd like to say that the bullying that happened to me did not happen in a school that was part of the Forest Lake Area School District. I now go to school at Scandia Elementary, part of the Forest Lake Area School District. I feel Scandia Elementary does a very good job of preventing bullying. The Forest Lake Area School District schools use the Olewus Bullying Prevention Program, a research-based bullying prevention program. I feel this is a good program. I'm sharing my story of bullying for this reason. I want to prevent other kids from experiencing bullying because I know how much it hurts. No one deserves to be bullied. All kids need to feel safe. Here's my story. When I was 7 years old in second grade, I was the victim of ongoing and repeated bullying at the elementary school I then attended. The bullying that happened to me included physical harm, verbal threats, intimidation, and stealing. The physical harm and intimidation that happened to me included that I was hit repeatedly in the hallways and other places in school. The students did this because they thought it was funny. Being hit all the time and laughed at made me feel sad and hurt. These same students pushed me around on the ground every day while I was waiting in the after-school curbside pickup area in the cafeteria. These students also took my backpack and other belongings every day while I waited in this school area. I didn't like any of this. This made me feel frustrated, angry, and hurt that I couldn't stop my belongings from being taken from me and couldn't keep myself from getting pushed around. One of the worst incidences of when I was physically hurt and threatened was during lunch and recess on February 2nd, 2010. On this day, while I was eating lunch at our assigned classroom table in the cafeteria, one of the bullying students stood up at the lunch table and said very loudly, "Who's going to help me beat up Jake today?" Then following lunch outside at recess, I was cornered and attacked. I was pushed to the ground repeatedly, up to 20 times. I tried to get away, but I could not. When the recess whistle finally blew and everyone went inside the school, the student who attacked me yelled at me repeatedly, "I'm going to kill you if you tell anyone. I'm going to kill you tomorrow." This made me feel very scared because I was afraid that he might try to seriously injure me the next day. I was scared about this for many, many more days following this attack, and I was scared about what was going to happen to me next at school. The day after I was attacked at recess, with my mom's encouragement, I switched to the other assigned table that I was allowed to sit at to eat my lunch, so I would not be by the boy who hurt me. This was the table where all the girls in my class ate. When I switched to the girls' table, the boy who had attacked me and was bullying me said very loudly to everyone, "Look, Jake's turning into a girl. Jake's a girl." This made me feel embarrassed because I was getting teased. I was only trying to get out of harm's way. Having all this bullying and peer abuse happen to me at school made me feel really scared. Going to school was hard for me every day because I didn't know what would happen to me there. My mom was really worried about me at school too. She ate lunch with me and came to recess to try to keep me safe. I told my mom about the harm that was happening to me at school, and she reported these things to the school officials. The only consequence that happened to the two students who admitted to hurting me repeatedly was that they had to apologize, even though the bullying continued through the end of the school year. My mom asked the school official to have the students who were hurting me be moved to a different assigned table area in the cafeteria because of the bullying happening at lunch and recess. The answer given to her was, "No, we can't move these boys to another place at lunch because what about those kids they would then sit by?" Because of this, I had to sit by the students who bullied me every day. I constantly had to worry about what they would do to me at lunch and then recess. My mom had a meeting with the school officials about the bullying that was happening to me. She asked to see the school's policy and procedures for bullying. The school official said, "There are no procedures, no list of consequences for bullying here." At the same meeting, my mom asked, "How will you ensure a safe learning environment for our son?" The answer given in reply was, "I can't help you. I can't tell you. Not everyone shares the same values as you." My mom filled out harassment and violence reporting forms for several of the incidents of harm that happened to me this school year, but the school officials did not investigate these incidents. Because this school did not provide a safe learning environment for me, my parents took me and my younger sister out of this school. The following year, a group of parents shared concerns about bullying at this school at a school board meeting of this school. At that time, the response given was that no changes were needed. I know my story of being bullied is very sad, but there are countless other kids with stories of bullying that are similar or worse than mine. I have met some of these young people, including Christian, Alec, and Christine. They have all told their stories of being bullied to legislators and to others in our state and beyond, in hopes of protecting kids from bullying. Our friend, Ann Geddes, founded the nonprofit organization Jeremiah's Hope for Kindness in honor of her son Jeremiah. The mission of Jeremiah's Hope for Kindness is to foster kind and caring schools and communities. Dr. Olewis, the well-known researcher on bullying, defines bullying as, "Bullying is hurtful behavior that is repeated, done on purpose, and the target has a hard time defending themselves." Because bullying is a form of abuse, the target needs help to stop the harm from happening. They cannot do it alone. The 2010 Minnesota Student Survey found that 13% of students were bullied regularly once a week or more. This percentage is equal to more than 100,000 students in Minnesota being bullied on a regular basis. I think this is too many kids being hurt by bullying. A 2011 U.S. Department of Education report found that 70% of students are involved directly or indirectly with bullying, either as a bully, target, or bystander. Bullying negatively affects everyone who is exposed to it. Our current 37-word anti-bullying law does not protect all kids from the harm of bullying, which is why we need this newer, stronger, better, and more protective law. I ask you to join me in getting the Safe and Supportive Minnesota Schools Act passed. Thank you, every one of you, so much for being here at our community gathering. Together, we can keep all kids in our great state safe. like this. Okay.
Who's hurting, to those who've had enough, to all the undeserving, well, that should cover all of us. Please do not let go. I promise there is hope. Hold fast, help is on the way. Hold fast, he's come to save the day. What I've learned in my life is greater than my strife, is his grasp. So hold fast. Will this season ever pass? Can we stop this ride? Will we see the sun at last? Or could this be our lot in life? Please do not let go. I promise you there's hope. Hold fast, help is on the way. Hold fast, he's come to save the day. What I've learned in my life, one thing greater than my strife, is his grasp. So hold fast. You may think you're all alone, and there's no way that anyone could know what you're going through. But if you only hear one thing, just understand that we are all the same, searching for the truth of what we're soon to face, unless someone comes to take our place. Is there anyone? All we want is to be free, free from our captivity, Lord. Here he comes. Hold fast, help is on the way. Hold fast, he's come to save the day. What I've learned in my life, one thing greater than my strife, is your grasp. So hold fast, help is on the way. Hold fast, he's come to save the day. What I've learned in my life, one thing greater than my strife, is your grasp. So hold fast.
Thank you, Scott and Jeanette. That's wonderful, just beautiful. Thank you. It is my true honor to introduce to you our keynote speaker for tonight's gathering, Senator Scott Dibble. Senator Dibble is from District 61 in Minneapolis. Senator Dibble first became involved in politics in the mid-1980s, working on civil rights issues of GLBT communities, including HIV and AIDS. His involvements led to organizing on issues of social and economic justice, especially in the areas of neighborhood livability, transportation, housing, energy, and the environment. Senator Dibble was first elected in 2000 to the Minnesota State House of Representatives. In 2002, he ran for the state Senate, where he is now serving his 4th term. Senator Dibble has played a key role in a number of legislative successes, including the passage of the historic transportation funding measure, enactment of the Freedom to Breathe Act, ensuring clean air for all workers, approval of the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act, and he was the chief author of the historic Freedom to Marry Act. In 2012, Senator Dibble served on Governor Dayton's Task Force on Bullying Prevention. Senator Dibble, along with Representative Dabney, are the chief authors of the Safe and Supportive Minnesota Schools Act. On a personal note, I have a heart full of appreciation for the kindness that Senator Dibble has shown to my son Jake. Through Jake's involvement at the state capitol, Senator Dibble has become a role model for my son. And as a mom, I'm proud that my son knows a man in leadership who displays the values of integrity, compassion, strength, conviction, and takes the honorable road and stands up for what is right and true, including protecting children in our great state. Welcome, Senator Dibble.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm actually not the keynote speaker. I think Jake was the keynote speaker for the night, and it's hard. He's a hard act to follow, and he kind of said it all. So I'll try to fill in the gaps. But I want to reflect the thanks and send it back to Melanie and Jake and the whole family. They have been amazing. Jake, you're actually my role model. Here's the truth. There's no way I could have done what you've been able to do at 11 years old. I'm just amazed by Jake and your ability to articulate your story so clearly, and all the young people who have been out the forefront of this entire movement to make this change for the better in our schools and in the lives of our young people. But if I am your role model, this is one thing I ask. Don't grow goofy whiskers like this. This is, by way of quick explanation, is coming up on Movember, and guys are growing crazy mustaches to raise money for Men's Health. So that explains my silly look in front of you here today. So I am deeply moved and extremely honored to be here today with all of you in this sanctuary. And the time really has long since passed since we as a state should have enacted a much stronger set of protections for young people in our schools. The whole idea behind this movement for change is that no child in Minnesota should be afraid to go to school, to have to endure the taunts and the threats and the assaults, attacks on who they are. In fact, every child should know that they're loved and that they're welcome, and that in their uniqueness they're valued, they're wanted, they're an important part of our community because of who they are, not in spite of us. In spite of it, we all bring gifts. We all bring unique perspectives. We all bring talents, and we're all needed to be a part of the larger community. The other important thing to keep in mind as we work on this is that when a school tolerates or is otherwise not well equipped to deal with bullying, everyone is hurt. It's not a good place for anyone. It is corrosive, fear prevails, people, young people, and adults are made to feel powerless in their own lives. So over a number of years now that we've been organizing to pass a strong bill, it's been a mighty effort, and we've been gathering steam over these many, many years. But a couple of years ago, after yet another failed attempt, and Jake talked about this a little bit, we, along with the governor, decided to take this conversation even wider. Hear the reality of young people's lives all over the state. Hear what adults in the school communities were experiencing, what experts were learning about bullying's effects, and what could be done. And we learned an awful lot. We heard a lot of frustration, exasperation. We heard about people who didn't even come forward, but we heard about them through others because they had just given up entirely. But more importantly, I think, as a task force, as we run around the state, having those hearings and inviting experts in to come talk to us and having roundtable discussions, we heard a really important, strong message of hope, that it does not have to be this way. So the result of that, all that work, was the report of the task force, which I have right here, and I encourage everyone to go out and do a little Google search. It's easy to find, and read it for yourself. It's a good piece of work. Its subtitle is, "There needs to be more behind the posters than just tape." And that's a direct quote from a young person that we heard from, who talked about some of the anemic, well-intended, but ineffective efforts there were to address bullying in schools that amounted to nothing more than a school assembly, some posters on the wall, and things continued on as they always had been. And so they talked about there needs to be more than just tape behind the posters of bullying efforts. It needs to be robust and competent, with capacity, and driven to have real effects for the positive in young people's lives. So a number of findings and recommendations were advanced, which form the basis of the bill that's now in front of the legislature. The bottom line is that bullying can be prevented, and a school's climate can be improved. And that success can be seen in some schools in our state and a number of other schools in other places. Part of preventing bullying, of course, is for adults to respond effectively to incidents when they occur. Recognize it when they see it and hear it. Recognize when it's not bullying, something else less serious or more serious. Intervene and investigate in a timely manner. Follow through on what is necessary. Develop strong policies as a means of communicating, and communicate those policies well, and make sure those policies cover some just bare essential components. Part and woven all through all of this is, of course, providing for training, making sure that all the adults who are part of that school community inside the building, like I said earlier, know what they're seeing, know what they're hearing with some intelligence, and respond with some knowledge. And give resources to schools so they can adopt best practices around a strong anti-bullying initiative. And then create that system of measurement, that transparency, that accountability, so that we can know whether or not what we're doing is having an effect. And engage the whole community in this conversation, especially parents, in this vital and important work. Specifically, I wanted to read from the task force report. And if we succeed at passing this bill, we will have one of the best, most effective, and comprehensive bills, and the most capable bill of being implemented effectively in the country. So we first, of course, you saw up on one of the slides earlier, our existing so-called anti-bullying law. It's 37 words long, and it has literally no effect in making a difference in young people's lives. It's not followed, it's unclear, it's confused. So repeal that ineffective existing Minnesota law and replace it with something better. Make sure that we have an operational concept and definition of bullying, harassment, intimidation, so that we can assist students, parents, and school personnel's communities, collaborative agencies, like I said before, in better identifying what they're and responding. Creating that consistent baseline policy to address bullying, and enhance communication among and between school personnel, students, parents, and communities related to strategies and techniques to reduce the behaviors.
And then, of course, doing that measurement, that baseline data collection system communicated widely to the school community, to the state, and make sure that that's readily available so folks can look at that. And then part of bringing those resources to bear, that's not just money, but that's creating an interagency, interdepartmental collaboration, bringing a large group of professionals together to identify best practices, research-based efforts. The OVEUS program is one that Jake spoke of earlier. And within the Department of Education, create a school climate center so that schools can go and seek those resources, seek that technical assistance, whether they're launching the effort to adopt the policies at the local level, or they're wanting to launch a training effort among their teachers and other school personnel. They're wanting to figure out best ways of responding to bullying behavior when they see it, when they're wanting to respond to those who have been targets of bullying. They're wanting to give tools to young people who are bystanders so they know what to do and they have some tools to respond effectively. And then it is about money too, and making sure that we're finding the resources to support the School Climate Center, making sure that we're finding the resources to support schools at the local level to do the work that they're doing. Another foundational principle within the bill, which is often misunderstood, so it's very, very important to address, is that we leave most of this work to local school districts to determine for themselves, to work in conjunction with their leadership, their administration, parents, the local community, to develop their specific approaches to bullying, to develop the specific language of their policies, to figure out what the responses to bullying should be within a disciplinary framework, whether they want to work with restorative justice concepts and those sorts of things. There's often a misperception that somehow this bill is going to come in and label everything bullying and bring a hammer down on a young person. And that's just simply not the case. It's really about being intelligent, understanding why bullying occurs, and recognizing that kids aren't bad. These aren't bad kids we're talking about necessarily. We're talking about kids who are being kids who lack some leadership from the adults in their lives, who lack direction, and who are part of a larger climate, a larger dynamic that's going on around them. So with that, I'm going to wrap up so that we can hear from someone who can talk to us about how to get involved in this effort to pass this bill, and I think we're also going to reserve some time to respond to questions. But I really want to say thank you again for everyone, especially those brave young people. I wish all of you could be at the Capitol to hear Jake testify in front of those legislators, to hear these other young people come forward and tell their stories with such courage, so articulate, talking about things that they've endured, and really opening their hearts and laying their hearts bare so that the leaders of this state can understand the reality of young people's lives and do what it takes to support them so they can be safe and succeed in school and move on and be productive adults as a part of the Minnesota family. So thank you very much, and again, I appreciate the honor of being here.
Thank you, Senator Dibble, again for being a positive leader in our state. We all play a role in helping to get this new comprehensive bullying prevention bill passed this legislative session. I would like to introduce to you Meredith Stacey, an organizer from Outfront, Minnesota, which is a member of the Minnesota Safe Schools for All Coalition.
Oh. Well, thank you. Hello. Welcome, everybody, this evening. I'm so excited to see so many of your faces. Some of you I know and some of you I don't. As Melanie said, my name is Meredith Stacey. I am a community organizer with Outfront, which is a leading statewide organization, nonprofit organization that works for GLBT equality in the state of Minnesota. We're also the lead organization in the Minnesota Safe Schools for All Coalition, and I'm really very excited to be here to talk to folks in this community about what we are doing to help pass the Safe and Supportive Schools Act up here in the North Metro and slightly beyond, I suppose, the North Metro. So we're here for one reason this evening, as far as I can see. And that reason is really that bullying in our schools is a big problem. It's a big problem. And it's not just a big problem that happens for a few years and then kids get over it and they go on and they live their lives. It's a big problem and it traumatizes kids and it stays with them throughout their lives. I have a 1-year-old niece. Her name is Nora. She is the absolute light of my life. I live with her and I love waking up every morning and seeing her giggly face. She's like babbling a lot. And when I think about this bill, I think of Nora, who's going to grow up and go to school in Coon Rapids, where, you know, kids aren't always accepted for who they are if they're a little bit different than the person next to them. And I want this bill for her, because I know that when she goes to school and she gets bullied, if she gets bullied, it's going to affect her ability to concentrate, it's going to affect her ability to learn, but most importantly, it's going to teach her that she's the problem and that she needs to change. And kids who are bullied that I've seen grow into adults who bully. Grow in sometimes to adults who bully, but they also grow into adults who feel still that they're the problem and that they're the ones that need to change. And so I take that very seriously. So we've already heard really wonderful testimony from Jake about why this bill is important, and from Senator Dibble about the nuts and bolts of the bill. So it's my job to tell you about how we're going to pass it. Because I don't think that our kids can wait any longer. So we're going to pass it as soon as we can. So last May, when the bill failed to come to a vote in the Senate, folks at Outfront Minnesota and members of the Safe Schools for All Coalition kind of got together and started thinking about what went wrong. Why didn't we pass it? We thought that we would, and then we didn't, and it all got kind of messy. Even I was really sure that it was going to pass, and it didn't. And we started doing some thinking and looking at things, and we realized that when it comes down to it, the problem was that we weren't powerful enough as a grassroots movement. We didn't have enough people in our communities involved in the effort to pass it. We didn't have people talking to their friends and their family members and their neighbors about why this bill is so critically important to the safety of our children. And so we decided and we committed to changing that this year, and so that's what we're going to do. We are working right now, as we speak, to build a bigger, stronger, more powerful grassroots movement around this bill. And when I say right now, I mean literally in all corners of the state of Minnesota, we have people working to do this. It's happening here in Forest Lake, as you can see. It's happening in Minneapolis and St. Paul. It's also happening in Duluth, Brainerd, Rochester, St. Paul, Circle Pines, you name it. So I want to tell you the 5 simple things that you can do. A couple of them you can do here tonight, and then you can go home, and that's great. And a couple of them you can do outside of this evening, which is also great. So the things I want to talk to you about first, or the first one is really simple actually, and a lot of you have already done it, is you can sign the Safe and Supportive Schools petition. Raise your hand if you came in this evening and were asked to sign the petition. Yeah, probably some of you signed it and you didn't realize you did. It was on the sign-in sheet. What we're doing is we're trying to get a list of 10,000 names in the state of Minnesota that we can send to our state legislators so that they can see the groundswell of support for this bill. And it's from people not just in the metro, but from people in greater Minnesota, both north, south, and west. We're going to do that. And then we're going to talk with our legislators about that. So if you all want to look in the packet that you were given when you first came in, there's a lot of information, and then the very back, there's a half sheet that looks like this. Everybody see that? So one thing you can do is if you think this bill is really important for your kids and for your families and for your neighbors, you should meet with your legislator about it. You should have a conversation with the person that represents you at the Capitol and tell them how important it is to you and to your family that this bill is called to a vote, and tell them why. Those conversations make a difference. Those conversations matter, and we encourage you to do that. For those of you who are from this district in Forest Lake that we're in now, you can find your senator and your representative's contact information on the back of the brochure of the program. If you don't have it listed there and you need help, there's a link that you can visit, or you can contact me. My phone number's on there, and I'd love to help you. The other thing that you can do is you can attend an event on December 8th, which is a Sunday. This is an opportunity where we're going to have every supporter that we can find in the metro area meet in one room, engage in some really creative conversation about why this bill is important to us and what we can do individually and together to help pass this, because we're not going to do it alone. Right? We do better work when we're in groups. We do better when we organize. And so that's what we're going to do. The other thing you can do, and this is the 4th out of 5, so I'm almost done. The other thing you can do, and this is near and dear to my heart, is you can help us by joining the North Metro organizing team. This is something that a team that I work very closely with, and it's something that I take very seriously. So our work in safe schools is incredibly important. It's incredibly important because, as I said earlier, students who are bullied grow up to think that they're the problem, that there's something wrong with them, that this is just the way that things are going to be, and there's nothing they can do about it. Kids who bully grow up with that same kind of mentality. This is how things are. Other people are wrong. There's nothing that we can do about it. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. And so what my team is doing is we're working to change that narrative by helping to pass the Safe Schools bill and to look at how we can bring progressive change to our communities. And so if you're interested in joining that team and learning about the specific things that we're doing in your community, I'd like you to mark that on this sheet as you would that you want to meet with your legislator, and I can help you out with that. And finally, the last thing you can do is, if we want to pass this bill, we've got to get a big movement going, a big movement. And that takes time, and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes resources. And all of those things on a campaign take money. And so one of the best things that you can do this evening is you can make a contribution to Outfront Minnesota, which will then go to help support the Safe and Supportive Schools Coalition in our work. I only put a few envelopes out in the front because y'all like to spread out a whole lot. So I'll tell you, the envelopes look like this. If you don't have them in your pews, you can find them up closer here, or I can get you one. The money that you would give will go to help support staff for Outfront Minnesota, staff that are going to go to those places I mentioned before in Rochester and St. Cloud and Duluth and Grand Rapids, and help to put on events just like this, where we're going to educate our fellow community members about the importance of this bill. It's critically important that we sustain this work through the passage of this bill. So you can make a one-time contribution with this envelope. You can also become a sustaining member of Outfront Minnesota, where you make a monthly contribution to help support the work. So those are 5 pretty simple things that you can do to help support this work. 5 simple things. Do you have any questions about these acts? Okay, great. Then I want to open it up. Does anybody have questions in general? Everyone feels yeah?
How will the schools pay for this new unfunded program?
Can I have you repeat?
How will the schools pay for this new unfunded program?
Well, it's not unfunded. There are some dollars that are devoted to this purpose. Additionally, a lot of the resources that schools are already spending on a number of these efforts around responding to bullying are already in place. Plus, like I said, we're setting up the Resource Center at the Department of Education, and those are services that are available free of charge to the schools. That's paid for out of our general fund tax dollars that we all contribute through our income and sales tax and other ways as well. So there are resources devoted through the Safe Schools levy, through the additional, $400 and some million that we brought to public schools in the last appropriations bill. And additionally, there are avoided costs that we have to keep in mind. Better health outcomes, better academic outcomes for schools, and less exposure to liability. So you have to consider how schools will be saving money by responding more intelligently to bullying. Yes?
Are we allowed to fill out the sheet or to state legislative?
So.
Yes. She asked, are children allowed to fill out the sheet and indicate that they want to meet with their representatives or their senators? The answer is yes. You are definitely allowed to do that. Do they also count for the petition? Yes.
Everyone's a citizen. So, yes, sir.
My question is, was the bill introduced, or did the leadership not introduce it? Was it voted upon and failed, or do you need more support from the leadership inside?
Great. That's an excellent question. If folks didn't hear that, kind of what's the status of the bill and where is it in the process? So the bill has made it actually almost all the way through the process. Folks may know that we meet in a 2-year cycle, not just a 1-year cycle. So any bill that hasn't made it through the pipeline remains an active bill. So, and we also run bills on a parallel track in the House and in the Senate. We introduce identical bills, and then we run them through their processes. So the bill has run through its entire process in the House, and was voted on the House floor, and because they acted on it first, then the House file came over to the Senate, and in the closing days of the legislative session, last 2 or 3 days of the legislative session, we'd taken up the bill in the Senate. It had already been through all of its committee stops, and we were dealing with the Senate language. It's a technicality to call it a House file. I won't get into the nuances of that. But we were dealing with because there's always a slightly different version of legislation because, the different bodies have different ideas, and that's a good thing. That's why we have a bicameral legislature. So we were debating the bill on the Senate floor in one of the last 2 or 3 days. It was late at night, and there was just a lot of debate. It was, promised to be a 10 to 15 hour debate by the other party, and it was really important that we be able to get to some of the other pieces of legislation, like the appropriations for our K-12 education, our tax bill, et cetera, et cetera. We had a number of items. So we made the decision at that time to simply suspend the debate. What happens then is the bill simply goes back to its last committee stop, and so what we'll need to do is have just repeat the hearing that we had in the Finance Committee in the Senate, get it back to the Senate floor, renew that debate, pass the bill in the form and manner which the Senate believes it should be. Then it goes back over to the House, and they'll either accept it in that form, or they'll decide they don't quite want to accept all the pieces that the Senate amended the bill with. And so then we'll go to a conference committee, iron out the differences, vote on an identical version of the bill back in the respective chambers, and then it will go to the governor. That process, I anticipate, won't take very long at all. And we have strong support from our leadership, to answer the other part of your question. So as I see 3 hands back there, so decide amongst yourselves who should ask first. Okay.
I'll start. It seems like common sense, so my question to you is, what are the points of opposition to this?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. It seems like common sense, and what are the points of opposition? That's a good question, and I completely agree with you. I think this issue has become highly politicized. When the leader of the Republican minority who delivered the news to me that they were going to filibuster this bill, there's a perception that somehow this bill is focused on GLBT kids and GLBT issues. And that's actually not true, but for whatever reason it's been identified as such by very conservative elements in the other party. And Senator Hand said to me, well, you know, we haven't had many wins, so we need this win. You know, and of course I think that was a reference to the marriage bill. And so it seems like it's become, unfortunately, political. Unfortunately, I think the consequences that young people, once again, you know, don't have these strong anti-bullying, anti-harassment protections on an even basis across the entire state. So, you know, that's my best analysis. But when you really do go into the details of the bill and help people understand what its provisions are, it's really common sense, and it's research-based, and it's about collaboration with parents and teachers, and really delivering the most effective policies possible. So it is common sense. And when you ask the public generally what they think about the bill, about the details of the bill, there's overwhelming support. It crosses party lines, it crosses geographic differences, et cetera, et cetera. So I think if we can just marshal our forces and create the movement for change and the case for change, and get through some of these bumps, these political bumps, and really get a good bill passed and implemented in schools, some of that political friction and static will dissipate pretty quickly. So I saw another hand back here.
I had the same question.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
It seems to me like it would be helpful for passage to enlarge the group that this concentrates on. Now it seems like a school issue, and there are people who don't have kids in school anymore, and maybe their grandchildren are in school or whatever. It just doesn't seem as relevant or essential. And it seems like it's such a mental health issue too, and that it was a health community. You know, if you could have testimony from doctors and psychologists and school nurses or people who know that this really is important from a mental health and physical health standpoint.
Why don't you just stay up here? Because I think some of these are particulars about the bill, and some are suggestions about how we can broaden the coalition and present a set of arguments from credible messengers. So the question or the suggestion was, you know, having a broad-based coalition and having professionals help present the arguments on behalf of the bill. It's an excellent suggestion, and I'm happy to report, in fact, we've accomplished that quite well already. Some of the most powerful testimony and some of the most powerful written evidence that we provide in support of the bill come from school social workers, school psychologists, school counselors, and the Minnesota Academy of Pediatricians, who were both represented on the task force, as well as providing some of the strongest research-based testimony on behalf of the bill. What is the true nature of bullying? What is the true effect of bullying? What are the true well-researched programs and initiatives to be implemented that respond effectively to bullying? Do you have more to add?
Just a tiny bit, and I would say that one of the best ways that we can do that is to be talking to the people in our lives that we think care about this, whether or not they have kids in schools, and to have them send their stories about why it's important to them to their legislators, to show that it isn't just parents of kids and teachers that are caring about this, but people who live in our communities and just have thoughts on it, you know. And I think there are a whole host of reasons that people think that this is important. I don't have kids myself. I have a niece, as I told you, but a lot of the reasons I care about this have nothing to do, actually, with like the most obvious reasons of like protecting kids in schools. I think there are a lot of other effects that bullying has on our society, and so you can talk about those too. So I think that's the other part that I would add, is talk to people about letting their legislators know why it's specifically important to them. And for folks who are curious, if you look in the packet, there's a whole list of our 92 coalition partners, and the list is expansive. There are a variety of different people. We have support of labor unions, we have support of domestic violence shelters, a whole host of organizations that really have nothing to do with actually kids at all. How do you become a coalition partner? You can talk to me about that. If you have an organization in mind, or if you yourselves would like to become coalition partners, see me after. I'd love to get your contact information. It's a really simple process. I think it's like a form that you fill out and turn into Outfront Minnesota. That's a good question. Yeah.
I want to say thank you so much for everybody who's here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My kids can never hear me when I talk to them.
There's something else going on there.
The thing I'm concerned about is I actually got the bill off online. It's a really long bill. And I was reading through some of it, and there was a part I was concerned about where it didn't say that the parents were going to be notified if the child had prohibitive behaviors or conduct against him. I would want to know if my child had been bullied. And I would want to know if my child was a bullier. And it doesn't say anywhere in there. Could you address that?
Yeah. It actually does say that parents should be notified, but it does provide for some measure of discretion on the part of the professionals in the school, and there's a good reason for that. And I can search through and find the language specifically that talks about that. Also, keep in mind there's a couple of different versions of the bill floating around. There's the House version, and then there's the Senate version that's not fully engrossed with some of the amendments that we made in the final debate on the floor, because the work didn't quite get finished up. But I'm pretty familiar with it because this is a source of a lot of discussion. And so it does indeed say that parents need to be involved in these incidents of bullying on either side. But it does allow for some measure of discretion, as we do in some instances in schools, because the truth is sometimes it creates a greater set of problems and issues for a young person if there isn't some work done, at least initially, ahead of time. The goal is always to bring families and parents into that conversation. But sometimes, and you can well imagine with a young gay kid, for example, they may run into a significant set of new problems if in fact the school professionals on site know that there's some big problem already in the family system around that particular issue. And that's not an abstraction. The reality of the fact is that we have a tremendous issue and problem with unaccompanied homeless youth in our state. Literally hundreds of kids are out on the street. And a majority of those kids are gay kids who have been turned out of their families. And so this is a real issue, and we need to deal with that with some sensitivity. And rather than creating an absolute black and white, a parent needs to be notified immediately, we need to work with that situation and that system to make sure that the kid remains safe.
Speaking of that, how does that protect a child like mine who was severely bullied, and we found out the day he was supposed to go kill himself and save the world of trouble? They did not notify me, they did not notify the bullies that lived in our neighborhood. And I found that out because I went over there by myself.
Right. Well, like I said, the requirements are in the bill are that parents be notified, but allows some small measure of discretion, so that a professional can make an analysis of that. So
I guess I'm asking if there were professionals involved in the situation, school counselors, the principal, all of those people, and they chose to think that was not important that I know.
helpful. I fully support the bill, don't get me wrong.
Right.
I'm just trying to understand.
Right. And I'm saying I think the language of the bill responds to that, right? And I think stepping back just a bit, it is, in many cases with bullying, there's a lot of professionals involved, and they don't know what to do or how to act or how to respond appropriately at all. They think they're doing the right thing, they're well-intended, but they're not yet the beneficiaries of evidence-based research on how to respond effectively to bullying incidents when they occur, how to investigate them, how to speak with kids about them, how to even discern who's bullied and who's the bullier. There's just such a lots of principals and counselors and teachers, and if you've seen the documentary Bully, it's exasperating to watch that documentary because you see adults, parents, the school administrators, the teachers, well-intended, but not intervening in a way that produces a good outcome for these young people. Re-victimizing bullies, not discerning between who's the actor and who's the recipient. And I think if we're able to enact this and create the school climate center, get best practices, well-researched practices in place, get systems and programs and implement initiatives like the OVEUS anti-bullying program, we will be many, many miles ahead of the game.
How long after the bill is passed do you anticipate that the schools will have the training and the resources to actually effectively deal with bullying?
So her question was, how long will it take after the bill is passed? I think it'll be some amount of time. I know that the governor has placed a very high priority on this. On the task force, the Commissioner of Education, the Commissioner of Human Rights were present for every single meeting, there already is quite a bit of expertise within the Department of Education as well, and so I think they're ready to pull together both the climate advisory task group as well as the climate center, and I think the governor will be really interested in making sure that things crystallize pretty quickly. And I don't want to speak for the administration. I don't live on that side of the street, so I don't know how long it takes to pull these things together and actually get things rolling. But I do know the governor, when he pulled together the task force itself, put us on a very, very aggressive timeline. Usually task forces meet for about a year and then turn in their report and then start getting legislation rolling. And he said, well, if this is as immediate and dire a situation and circumstance as you describe, wrap up your work in time for there to be some effective policies in place for this school year. Now, unfortunately, we didn't pass the bill, and so that didn't actually happen. But that gives you some idea of how big a priority this is for the governor, for the Commissioner of Education. So what I would hope is that at a minimum in time for the coming school year, we'll have some strong policies in place, as well as those resources and tools that schools can use to put those in place. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. Yep.
I did not see the bill, but I did have a question with regard to whether or not the bill encompasses bullying through social media.
Yeah, the question is, does it include bullying through social media? Yeah, in the definition of bullying, it does talk about electronic forms of bullying and harassment. It's a difficult issue, of course, because the ability for a school to have jurisdiction over something that occurs outside the building is difficult to construe. There really does need to be some sort of a nexus between the kind of bullying that's occurring, whether and how it's brought into the school, or whether it occurs on school equipment and that sort of thing. But it is spelled out specifically in the language to include. As a matter of fact, I was listening on public radio on the way up about bullying that's occurring through social media and electronic means. It's a tough nut to crack because it occurs out of view and out of sight from adults in so many different ways. It's something we really have to grapple with. I don't think anyone's really quite solved that problem. So we have a state legislator here.
Most common courtesy, usually when another one site you can go to. It's just Minnesota Child Protection League, Minnesota Child Protection League, and it's www.mnchildprotectionleague.com. And it does address the issues that are discussed tonight. I think it's important that you look at both sides of the issue. I think Forest Lake, I taught at Forest Lake for 34 years. I think they have an excellent program and for harassment, anti-bullying. And I know Jane mentioned that Scant Elementary School has an excellent program. I think district-wide we have an excellent program. So make sure that you educate yourself, read the bill, and look at both sides of the issue. That's my recommendation. I'm always available to come talk, chat with me. And thank you, Senator Dibble, for coming to Forest Lake.
Glad to have you here, Representative. Glad you found out about the meeting. So, Tammy.
I was just going to help people understand about a couple of questions, if it would be okay if I mentioned an example from my son and like what the school would call and tell me without telling me was the issue. I don't know if you can hear me okay. An issue about being gay. My son went to an open high school, and or actually school was high school life, and he died of suicide 3 years ago. And it kind of upsets me. I know you say that both sides of the issue, but this isn't an issue that there's to be both sides of. When we're protecting kids, even if this fear has the same school, it does not mean that people in this community can't fight for relatives or other people in the state. I found out what happened with my son. Had a house burning of an incident that had happened, and they never called me. Found this out after he died. Since they knew it was something about him being gay, all they could have, they should have just called me and said, an incident happened at school today. It was something because a colleague might want to talk to his son about it when he gets home. That was what I think Senator Dibble means when he says to use some discretion. Some discretion. If you, the school might not have known diagnosed he was gay, and that I was supportive of him, and for who he was as a person. So that all he had to do was tell me that something happened that day, and I could have talked to him about it. I've talked to many adults now who have went through bullying and still have a hard time, and they said they never wanted to tell their parents because they don't want to hurt their parents. But they don't want their parents to maybe go to school and say something. So, and pretty much all issues get, you want to see both sides of it. I don't see what the other side could be when we're talking about children's safety. This is a bipartisan issue. This is something that should not even be political at all. This is something that we all need to come together for and please do. My youngest candidate started homeschooling 2 weeks ago because he wanted the same stuff. So it shouldn't have to happen when, if I was in home and I got homeschooled and I had to go to school like this. You shouldn't have to do that. Poor Jane shouldn't have to do that. And lost her son. Bullying. We're losing more and more kids. We need to do something before we lose any more. Sorry.
So, thank you, Tammy. Thank you. So how are we on time?
We have time for one more question.
Okay, guess one more. So, okay, I don't think we, we'll do two because we have another legislator, so we'll give the legislator a courtesy, Representative Yaruso. Why don't you go ahead and then we'll wrap up with this gentleman here.
Hi, I'm Mark Russo. I'm from not quite neighboring district, short of American Hills and Monsoon. And I'm one of the co-authors in the House on the bill. And very much in support of it. And one of the questions, a couple of questions were about how difficult is it going to be for school districts to implement this, and why do we need this? We have a new program and whatnot. And vast majority of my house district is in the Monsoon School District. And Monsoon is one of those districts that has a really good policy in place already. And so for a district like that, There's very little they're going to need to change. There might be, there's some additional teacher training that they might have to do, which fits into their existing, every district has to do teacher training all the time. So this will be one of the things they do in that. So it won't be a huge burden on a district like that. It's already done a lot to get these kind of policies in place. The reason we need to have the state legislation is so that we get the other districts that haven't done that on board. Okay, so if you're sitting in a district that's good to go, you're still good to go. Okay, but we need to make sure that every kid in the state can be safe at school and know that they can be safe at school. A lot of the concerns of, that kids now, some things got addressed. We had a tremendous amount of testimony and a lot of work done on the bill. And it's a long bill because there are so many details to be worked out on. It has the support of a very large coalition of people that you've heard about. It's pediatricians, faith-based organizations, all sorts of people that are trained this. As the question was asked about the cost, we do have a counter-example of what happens when you don't have the policies in place. They tell us the story from that district, and they have a federal lawsuit. And nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to need to go there, and it's certainly not a very cost-effective way to proceed with policy. I taught in high school for 9 years, and a very supportive environment, but you need to have backup. Even if you have the most well-meaning teacher in the world, if they don't have the backup all the way to the top, they can't help the kids because they need to have that whole system in place. So sometimes you hear people talk about, well, it's just common sense. Of course you would address this. I was a teacher, whatever. But if you don't have backup from your principal, your superintendent, your school board, all the way to the tippy top of that organization, then you can't really address these mental problems. You run into roadblocks. So very strongly supportive, and we're ready to move forward in the House.
All right, thanks. And then I promised this gentleman he'd get the last word. So. Last question.
I haven't read the bill either, so I'm not with all the details, but is there some aspect of the bill that somehow holds parents of children who bully accountable?
So the question is there some way of holding the parents of children who bully accountable? I would say not specifically, maybe in the manner that you describe, but I did just find the language. There is a provision in the kind of the thresholds, the minimum thresholds for a policy that parents will be brought into all of the investigation and the communication and the response to bullying incidents. One thing we want to keep in mind is that kids who bully, sometimes kids who are bullied bully, sometimes kids who bully need some coaching and some redirection, and we leave a lot of the decisions about how to respond from a disciplinary perspective to local schools, to the local professionals, to the local school districts as well. We don't mandate and dictate, forms or kinds or specificity around discipline, then that's appropriate. We have this long tradition of determining those kinds of policies and those expectations and those responses at the local level. We have a strong local control tradition in Minnesota. But really the goal is to not label kids, but it's to move and shape and redirect behavior, end the problem of bullying, and kind of restore kids, hold them accountable, make sure that there's an appropriate response. But the goal is to end the behavior and make sure that kids can move on, whether they're bystanders, whether they're the target of bullying, whether they're the actors, move on to better behavior, to a safer environment, and ultimately mature into great adults. And so, yeah, absolutely drawing parents in. You know, I think there are already a lot of provisions in law for holding parents accountable for the misdeeds of their kids. And so if it rises to that level, we have an existing platform in law to rely upon for those sorts of incidents that are that serious. So with that, I think I'll wrap up. Melanie, are you going to send us out? Okay, well, thanks again very much, everyone. I really appreciate everyone's attention and the honor of having me here and the amazing work that's being done up in Forest Lake.
Thank you, Senator Dibble again, and Meredith. I'm going to shorten up my ending a little bit here because we have a beautiful song that I want to make sure we get in here tonight. But thank you to the Minnesota State Schools for All Coalition and to Meredith tonight for sharing and for working on getting this bill passed. Thank you to our talented musicians who added so much inspiration tonight to this program. Thank you, Pastor Paul, for your wonderful opening welcome. Thank you to Jake, and thank you for always following the voice of truth. Okay, buddy, I'm proud of you, okay? Thank you, Senator Dibble, again for being here tonight on this Tuesday evening and for taking our questions and answering them so well, and again for being an inspiration and for being a role model to my son. To young people that are here tonight who may have experienced bullying and to the parents whose children may have been hurt by peer abuse, I'd like to say that I understand it and I support you. To my friend Ann, I support you, okay? And to the young people here tonight who want to make a change, who hold in their hearts the values of respect, responsibility, kindness, and freedom, I want to say that you have the power to change the social norms around bullying, and you have the power to be upstanders. So everyone, please join us in protecting our community's most important resource, our children. Thank you for being here tonight. And we have a closing song by Ted, and the song is Learning to Be the Light. And I think it's a beautiful way to end our program tonight. Thank you for spending your time with us tonight. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it over to Ted and Jeanette. Thank you.
When the stars came crashing down in tiny pieces to the ground, I was all alone down here, trapped beneath the atmosphere, and I thought somebody called my name. I spun around and caught a flame. I gave in to a God I didn't know, and now everything is falling into place. A brand new life is calling, and I owe it all to grace. So much brighter living in your world, Savior, what you did for me. You gave me something I want everyone to see. When we stumble and it all goes wrong, only you can make it right. So I say, oh, 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 I'm learning to be the light. Whoa, whoa, I'm learning to be the light. Whoa, whoa. When a heart's as cold as ice, you can't melt it with advice. No one wants to listen to a list of things they shouldn't do. So I build a city on a hill, and I light a candle on a sill, knowing you'll be always knocking at the door. Oh God, I just want to love on everyone. All I have is yours to give, so let the people come. So much brighter living in your world, Savior, what you did for me. You gave me something I want everyone to see. When we we stumble and it all goes wrong, only you can make it right. So I say, oh, I'm learning to be the light. Whoa, whoa, I'm learning to be the light. Whoa, whoa, I'm learning to be the light that makes the shadows hide, the light that breaks the curse of pride, the light that takes the weary in its arms. When it all came crashing down, there was only darkness all around, but in the distance I could see a flame. So much brighter living in your world, Savior, what you did for me. You gave me something I want everyone, I mean everyone, to see. When we stumble and it all goes wrong, only you can make it right. So I say, oh, I'm learning to be the light. Whoa, whoa, 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 I'm learning to be